This is a meeting of the Maintenance and Development Subcommittee of the Springfield City Council. And we're here to talk about the infrastructure priorities for the city of Springfield. And probably chaired by myself, Councilor Walsh, joined by a member of the committee, Councilor Ledman, head of DPW, Chris Signoli, and Paul Tuthill is here, and Dave. Dave, want to pronounce your last name for me?
It's Kasha.
Kasha,
Yep.
Angela Pupilo's office. So I think the best place to start would be with you, Chris, the infrastructure priorities. Do you have a list? Is the council going to have input into some of these priorities, or what's your sense of how this is going to work?
Well, if you're talking about catering, I just want to make sure, are you talking about probably most likely in response to a federal infrastructure bill and or ARPA?
Yes.
Okay.
And there are some things obviously that wouldn't be covered by ARPA, but maybe are covered by this. Is that correct?
Right, and that's the reason why I asked the question, because I'll give you two different answers.
Okay.
ARPA with regard to DPW is pretty much tied to drainage work, the way that the bill is put together for us. There's water, sewer, drainage, broadband. There's some other things that are in there, but we're probably going to be mostly looking at drainage and associated work with that. I have a listing in a letter that I have already provided to TJ and to Tom Moore of what I see are eligible expenses under ARPA. Some of them have nothing to do with infrastructure. Some of them are vehicles. Some of them are solid waste related that have some language inside of the ARPA rules. But most of the stuff that I'm going to be dealing with is on the probably drainage side. Now, on the infrastructure bill, whether we are talking state side or federal side that comes into us, it really will depend on how the money will flow. And where that becomes important is if we go back to like 2008 and 9, I know I've said this before, that when all of that shovel-ready work under the Obama administration came in, the states, it was all given to the states and state transportation authorities for distribution. And there were no caveats in that bill about how it was supposed to have been sent down to municipalities. And in virtually every state that I dealt with, I was on the private side at that time, the states took, I'm going to say 90% of the money to do stuff. What I have been harping on, we've been harping on it with Congressman Neal and with other people, is that when the money comes to the state, there has to be a methodology for it to get down to the municipalities. And when it gets down to the municipalities, I use the suggestion of the percentages that are done through Chapter 90, percentages that are done through the TIP process with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, just so that we can get the money. Now, assuming a pot of money of some shape or size comes to the city, then we have to figure out in the bill what sort of restrictions that we have on it. And most likely the restrictions will be really what we deal with at the state level right now on restrictions that we get from the state, which means in general, the only restriction that we end up with are issues related to private ways and things like that. But I don't like to jump the gun on that, because depending upon how the money comes in, and the reason why I say that, what my hope and goal would be is that we would get money that would be almost like a unrestricted grant, that we could use it for what we needed on the infrastructure side. And if we do that, then obviously that opens us up to doing a lot of different things with it. But from a priority standpoint, we have our capital plan. I have the information that I've put together for the ARPA stuff that kind of focuses on a handful of things. Obviously roadways. And if I can get some roadway stuff done, and really what I want to do is get away from the Mass DOT process and be able to run these projects on our own. Just give us the money and we'll run them on our own. So we have some roadway work that we would do. And, projects like, complaints that we've received over the years, things like Liberty Street and other major roadways that need to be upgraded, that as part of our Chapter 90 money, we have to do over a series of years. So
Okay.
then with that also becomes, how much of this money can we use for things like sidewalks and,
Oh, that's sidewalks and roads. Very interested in that.
yeah, and on the sidewalks, what sort of restrictions could there be on that as well? And then we are talking about intersection upgrades. Intersection upgrades to me are, if I can do intersection upgrades between $1.5 and $2 million. And if I don't have to follow Mass DOT guidelines, I can get them done in design in 7-8 months and get them out to bid and redo. I probably have 15 or 20 problem intersections that, are in dire need of some upgrade that, just going through the Mass DOT process is a 5-6 year process. So,
Right.
as an example, obviously we're going to be doing the X over, but, one of the complaints I get is, Bradley and Plumtree Road. And I use that as an example simply because it's a small intersection. There's a lot of cars. It's a very typical intersection throughout the city. And like I said, I probably have a dozen like that we could do stuff on. Then it gets into the utility side of, okay, drainage and upgrades of other items like that. The last thing that I'm also interested in is our flood protection system. We have an issue over the last 3 or 4 years. We have done significant upgrades to, we have 3 sections that we deal with: the Mill River section, Connecticut River South, Connecticut River North. The Mill River and Connecticut River South, we have upgraded, and we are in very, very good condition on that. We have one piece of work that we're doing this fall. The Connecticut River work north in Riverside Road and some of those other areas, we are having issues related to water, sewer, storm, some cave-ins, some sinkholes. That roadway project up there is probably like a $9.5, $10 million project. So we've been going back and forth with the Corps. So we have Army Corps work that we have to do. We have roadway work. We have sidewalks, and then obviously we have signalized intersections. Those are, from an infrastructure standpoint, where the first step that I get is when we start to see the true bill. I've stopped wasting my time reading the federal bills because they keep changing. And there's a couple components in some of those federal bills that literally scare the hell out of me of the way that they're trying to get money. One of them in there is a use tax. So if you have
Did you say use? USC?
Use tax.
Use. Oh,
Use,
why are you?
not you, not like in my cousin Vinny, not a you. Use tax.
That was
that talks about when you have to report every year how many miles and you get charged per mile. And that would be on trucking industries, that would be municipalities, that would be everything. So in the state of Massachusetts, the way that it was discussed is every year when you would go get your inspection, you would get a bill from the state that said you drove X amount of miles last year, you owe us $322.
Well, we do have some people from the state here, and actually we were joined by Anthony Moore from Senator Gomez's office.
So really, it's like, on the federal side, once I get that legislation and we find out, the uses and stuff like that, then those items that I talked about, we have priority listings for our roadways, priority listings for our sidewalks, priority listings for our intersections.
Have you sent to council these priorities, the same thing that you sent to Tom Moore?
I have not. I can send that. I can send that to you. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
The list that the list that I have, I don't go into details on roadway stuff. It's a little big picture. I do go into detail on our drainage stuff because I knew that was very, very, very specific to the ARPA, because what I put it together was for the ARPA stuff.
Right.
So I have the priority listing for all of those. in which we're upgrading now,
priorities are,
excuse me,
yeah.
updating now because of we have some bond, we have bond money we're going to be using next year. I am fully anticipating, and I hope my friends from Rep. Pupolo and Senator Gomez's office will help us on this, is that there's a lot of talk about upping the Chapter 90 apportionment from 200 million statewide to 300, at least 300 million statewide. So that's something that if that happens, then I end up with a bigger paving list for next year. And as I mentioned, depending upon what we get for that, our priorities start to switch around a little bit on that. But we will buy, and I think our engineering side, our priority list for roadways, I gave them a directive a few weeks ago that I have to have a priority listing of our roadways for December 17th. That will have probably between a 12 and a $15 million list for us to be able to choose from, because we then have to start dealing with Columbia Gas and Water and Sewer on work that they're going to be doing over the next 2, 3, 4 years. Columbia Gas has already met with us on their priority systems that we've discussed. So, and they have a ton of work that they're going to be doing over the next 2 years in the city, next 5 years in the city. So I'll have that roadway list, like I said, in another month or so that we can get that out to utilities, and I can share that with the council, and I can share the ARPA information as well.
Good. And I know, Councilor Letterman, you're very interested in this infrastructure bill. And so I want to give you the opportunity to share your concerns or your priorities.
Sure, Chair Walsh, and thank you so much for calling the meeting. I think this is a great initiative in terms of starting the conversation early. Hopefully, our representatives down in Washington can get a federal bill figured out and get it up here to the Commonwealth so that we can, make these needed improvements. And I think Chris is hitting a lot of them that we hear from constituents. I wanted to highlight two that might be a little bit different from the roads and sidewalks, which are certainly essential. The first is going to be streetlights. I think that this is an opportunity to finally maybe have a conversation about putting the proper combination of funds together to upgrade our streetlights to LEDs. We are the only large city in Massachusetts that hasn't made that transition. It is a public safety issue. It is a neighborhood quality of life issue. And at the very least, we need to start with an audit of the streetlights across the city, which I know the council called for through our resolution back around 2018. We just continue to see when we go out at night these lights that are out, that are dim, that are blocked, and I just think we need to make that improvement. I will say Chris has been great about interfacing with Eversource and being able to get them done, but we can only call in so many, and then they break again. So I'm really hopeful through Chris and the DPW and through the state delegation, we can see a prioritization for LED conversion in whatever is the most efficient way possible. And then the second thing that I think we'll probably need to take a look at, and it will depend on the final language of the federal bill, is the municipal fiber internet conversation. I know the mayor's committed to doing the feasibility study. I think we'll have that in the near future, and that will give us a pathway. If there are funds for the from the federal bill that can go towards municipal fiber, we certainly will want to see those invested, because our surrounding communities are certainly far ahead of us on that. We don't want Springfield to be left behind. So those were the two, Chris, that I wanted to kind of plug in addition to everything you mentioned, is the streetlight conversion and audit, and then the federal, if the federal language allows for municipal fiber conversations, that as well.
Okay. And we're
Just so I can respond to that.
Let me just recognize Councilor Victor Davila. Okay.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you for joining. Yeah, did you want to respond, Chris?
Yeah, just to let Councilor know. On the broadband side, municipal fiber, I know that study process has started, and I know you guys had a meeting a month and a half, 2 months ago, I think, And I know we were having a discussion internally because we were really starting to get into the weeds on this. And my discussion had to do with, once we start to get to municipally owned, especially when we're talking about fiber, somebody else, IT side and all those people can handle all those wonderful details. But I was getting into things like ownership, conduits, the nuts and bolts. And to tell you the truth, one of the things that is a huge item when you get out there, especially in the city of Springfield, becomes dig safe. So when we have stuff in the ground, it then becomes our responsibility to take it over for dig safe. And I know in talking with the IT people, I said, you're going to be getting, we probably get 50 dig safe requests a day in the city
That
for different
many?
work that's going on.
Wow.
And so every one of those has to be investigated, and somebody has to go out in the field and mark those locations. You have to have accurate mapping. And the reason why I was talking about that is there have been over the years a number of, I don't like to use the word rogue, but various companies that have been installing conduit throughout the city for mostly broadband related activities. But then what they do is they take the conduit and then they lease the space to whoever they can lease it to. And these entities virtually now, none of them are registered as owners of the utility. So if there's a water main break and you need to go out and mark out a location, these companies aren't doing it. And so when somebody's excavating and they're hitting this wiring, all of a sudden you got a building out that has no, broadband infrastructure because, somebody just ripped out a wire. That becomes a huge issue. So we're really starting to dive into the weeds, and that gets into the yearly maintenance, the yearly oversight, the yearly budget, the yearly this, the yearly that, that we've been diving into. And I know on the cost side, that's the sort of stuff that we've been dealing with. And just on a separate note, we have had separate conversations with Eversource about retrofit for LEDs on there. And one of the things that they received ARPA funds for was just that. So we have made a pitch to them, and some of that got thrown into discussions about the money that they owe us and things like that. But we've had that discussion started that discussion with them, because I actually got a call out of the blue from somebody I had never met before there, who was kind of asked me a question. It's like, would we be interested in switching over to LEDs? And I kind of had a long conversation with him because apparently this person had never spoken with, hadn't spoken with anybody we've been dealing with. So they have the ability to do that. So I think that's one of the things that we're working with them a little bit right now. But I think long-term, when I say long-term, I'm talking the next 2, 3, 4 months. Short-term to me is what I'm doing this afternoon. So we'll definitely be having conversations with them about the LED side.
Okay, great. I want to recognize Councilor DeVilla, and then I want to hear from Dave from Representative Pupil's office and Anthony, because we want to get the what's happening on the state side and how that's going to impact Springfield. So Victor, do you have some concerns about the infrastructure?
No, I'm just listening to the great conversation.
Oh, you're only listening today.
Yeah.
All right, then, Dave, what can you tell us from the state side regarding what might trickle down to the city of Springfield? And I really like what Chris Signoli had to say about an unrestricted grant. I think that would be a huge help.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we're kind of where you guys are in this situation, meaning that we're also waiting on the federal side of things to trickle down. And then beyond that, it's going to have to go to the Ways and Means Committee before it comes out to the rest of us. Had we had this conversation a few days ago, we could have talked about maybe squeezing some of this stuff into the ARPA bill. But obviously that's being discussed in the House today. I don't really have any more information for you guys. Maybe Anthony does. Anthony, you got anything?
Yeah, Dave, honestly, it's pretty much the same sentiments on our side too. You know, everything is definitely in the house today. I'm looking forward to hearing the results on that.
So do you know what is being discussed that would be beneficial to Springfield?
Like I said, as far as the infrastructure
Springfield-
bill is concerned, not really. As far as the ARPA bill, I know there was some money for, and I think Chris, were you in that meeting about the drainage, the drainage we had a couple weeks ago? I know that there was ARPA funding for those projects. I forget what the sewer runoffs into the Connecticut River.
That and most of that stuff that we discussed, that falls under water and sewer.
Right.
It falls under their side, but yeah, I was part of that.
Yeah, so I know that's coming. I can do a deeper dive if you guys want me to and try to see what I can pull. But that's the only thing I can certainly say is that some of those projects are going to be receiving more funding from the ARPA bill. And again, once we get more news on infrastructure, I can communicate that as well. But we're kind of where you guys are at, just sort of waiting on what the federal is going to be. Obviously, there's still concerns over like what even the number is going to be on that. So that's something we're going to pay attention to. But yeah, I will definitely monitor and let you guys know, because once the bill gets passed today, or hopefully tomorrow, I'll have more information for you.
David, has Representative Pupo put anything specific in that bill? Or is it more-
So we filed it might be a little out of scope for the bill, but we filed for some money for the police headquarters. That's something we've tried to do in the past, actually before I was in the office. So
Okay.
Other than that, we did not receive any sorts of requests for amendments. I don't know if anybody else in the Springfield delegation did anything. I can do a quick sweep of the amendments right here. Sorry, we're having a lot of whenever a big bill like this happens, everybody rushes to our online portal and it stops working. So apologies for that.
Okay. So Chris, to get back to you and to, the projects that I've been interested in for a long time, the sidewalks and the roads. We've had this conversation for a long time about how many people are waiting for sidewalks and roads, and Jesse, you know this because you're my former neighbor. Where does Magnolia Terrace come in? I mean, for when that road was done years ago, they never paved the whole road. They just stopped, and it's never been corrected. So people that live in the park, are they part of this project, and are they on this so-called list?
For sidewalks, yes. And I was laughing a little bit because I was right when you asked that question about the paving. Charlie Bryan's memory popped up in my head. For those that weren't involved, it was right before my time as well. But one of the things Mayor Ryan did one year is that he directed the DPW. I want to say we probably paved 30 or so streets in the Forest Park area, but we didn't go to the curb.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, just kind of paved, stayed away from the curb 2 feet on both sides and put down like a 3/4 of an inch, which probably looked great for about 2, 3, 4 years. Now it's every street's falling apart.
It has been a while for a lot of those streets, yes.
Yeah, because I think those were done in like 06, 07, 08, those years. But no, those are definitely on our list. We have a very robust sidewalk list, and that was one of the things. We had an in-house meeting yesterday because we do have some of the bond money that we're using for next year. We'll be doing probably close to 200 sidewalks around the city. So what we're trying to do is put together that priority list, both off of kind of three lists, off of applications, number one, number two, areas of town that we haven't dealt with in a while. And then number three, excuse me, locations where we have had significant complaints in the past. For example, when we get a complaint about a condition of a sidewalk, right now what we're doing is we go out there, kind of rip the sidewalk out, put some asphalt there, and then in the next year or two or so, we go out and this is stuff with our crews, DPW crews go out and do full sidewalk replacement. Well, that list, you know, we were keeping up with that list for a couple of years. Now that list is getting too big, so I want to grab a handful off of that list as well. So we do have a very, very big, robust list. One of the problems that happens on the sidewalk list, especially with applications, we have a lot of people who submit applications that have perfectly fine sidewalks. They just want new ones. So, you know, a lot of them are, we've been having to vet, and that's what our guys are going to be doing over the next few weeks to have a list, because our sidewalk list, and I know I talked to you about it when we did the bond stuff, our bidding that we want to go out, we want to put that bid out in, rather than what we've been doing historically is because of the state money, we have to wait until, you know, early May to put the bid out. This year, we want to put it out in February, end of February, so that we can start April 1st with the bond money. We don't have to wait for the state money to pop in. We can start doing all that work. So we will have all of our lists complete by the middle of January of what we're going to be doing, how we're going to be doing it. And in the middle of January, end of January is usually when we get our preliminary notification on Chapter 90, so that then we can at that point complete that list as well.
So I think what I'm trying to get at is, are there going to be restrictions by neighborhood? Because sometimes some neighborhoods, there are no sidewalks done or road paving. Are there going to be?
I try to spread it out through virtually every ward, and basically try to do every neighborhood as well. You know, and obviously there's certain years that you can't do certain ones. Then there's other years you'll do some more in it. So, but really attempt to spread it out as much as possible.
Okay, Councilor Davila, you have your hand up.
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everybody. Chris, good to see you. Chris, just two quick questions. Specifically talking about sidewalks, I know you guys have been doing your best to keep to make them to stay up on top of them, and it's like ever losing battle with the sidewalks and the roads, of course. But when you put out the black tar to cover over some of the raised parts in the city, it's functional. I think it's very functional. But is there any way? Because some of my constituents have said, can we use a concrete that looks like the sidewalk? Because it does look like, I'm going to use the word tacky.
Right.
Is there any way that that's one of my questions. I got a second question.
Right. The asphalt that we put out for us is meant to be temporary. You know, it's meant to be 1-2 years tops, and then we're going to come back and completely replace it. All we're doing at that point is, making it safe, doing it quickly. Then it gets on our internal list for our guys to do. And we've been catching up pretty well on those. But in the past year or so, that list has gotten bigger. That's why I'm going to grab some of those. But that the asphalt, when we started with our own crews 3 years ago, that is meant to be temporary. So yeah, I'm sure there's a couple of them that have fallen through the cracks. But you know, when we go in and I know we did, I want to say we did a couple of them, like on say Spruceland down there, and it's like, yeah, that's meant to be temporary. And whenever anybody calls in and says, hey, I need you to come out and take a look at our sidewalk, we always say to them, we're going to go out and look at it. If we need to do anything out there, look, it's going to be temporary. We're going to put asphalt down in the next year or so or two. We'll be out there with a brand new sidewalk. So that's what our goal is.
Right, but in terms of that, it looks like the same as the sidewalk. Is there any way that we can use the asphalt to look like the sidewalk, or is
no? Because we're using the same asphalt that we're using for any of our other projects. So we're moving around the city doing different things. So
it's a matter of economics.
It's all about it.
Otherwise,
and then just schedule being able to do different things.
I got you. I got you. The other question is, correct me if I'm mistaken, but I could swear.
Vic, I'm just gonna, before you say that, you know, Chris, that asphalt has really been a sticking point in the historic district.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, I
oh,
mean,
yeah,
it's not been well received.
absolutely.
Good point,
Absolutely.
Vic. Yep.
You're welcome, Madam Chair. And Chris, correct me if I'm mistaken, but I could swear that I heard in another meeting, maybe I know Attorney Moore is on the call. By the way, Attorney Moore, I will appreciate if you could please give me a call today to follow up on another item. But regarding the sidewalks, did I hear there's a commitment to making increase using ARPA funds?
Could you say that again, Victor? I couldn't hear you.
Did I hear there's a commitment in another meeting that there's a commitment to use ARPA money to increase the sidewalk repairs?
ARPA does not discuss at all the use of that money for sidewalks. We have a bond.
Mhm.
We have bond money that was just approved.
How
that we
much?
will be doing sidewalks. And then we also have an increase in CDBG money for sidewalks.
How
So
much is it?
next year, when we do it, we'll probably be doing about $1 million, $1.1 million. And as I said in some of the other meetings, is that depending upon federal infrastructure, ARPA, and state money that comes in, if I can move some of the bond money into, or some of the bond projects, for example, paving, public way, private ways, into some of that other funding,
Right.
that will free up more of the bond money for me to do sidewalks.
Right.
So that's kind of, that was, I think, the whole discussion about the ARPA is that if I can move projects into different categories and I free up bond money, I can end up doing more sidewalks.
And what's the total between the two, between the bond and the CDBG?
Bond right now, preliminary, I have about $1 million between the two.
Plus,
And then there's like 2 or 3 other small, 30,000, 40,000 grants that I have. So I want to do about $1 million of sidewalks. And that's just with the money that I know that I have right now. Every sidewalk in the city per address average is about $5,000.
right.
So that gets me 200 or so.
Right.
And again, if the CDBG ties me to CDBG areas, then with the bond money, that allows me to go into non-CDBG areas. So that gets me into 16 acres, East Forest Park, certain areas of the Orchard, certain areas of East Springfield that
Right.
aren't eligible under CDBG.
Right. So Chris, right now, how much is the budget for the actual sidewalk repair right now without the new bond and the CDBG? Is it $1 million or is it 700,000?
No, well, no, the bond money right now I planned on using between 500 and 600,000.
Okay.
The CDBG money is between $300,000 and $400,000. And then I have about 100,000 in like 2 or 3 other grant programs. Some complete street stuff. We get what I call Uber money that is all sidewalk related.
Wait, Chris, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just trying to understand. So there's really no increase then for sidewalk repair?
Well, the bond money is. The bond money, that's over and above what I get.
So what you're saying is you're going to have roughly a little over $1 million between everything new coming in, plus the existing line item on the budget right now.
Yes, yes.
How much is the existing line item on the budget? Is still $1 million right now?
For sidewalk construction, I have about a $600,000 budget, and that includes salaries and everything else for our
Gotcha.
in-house people.
Now,
And-
go ahead. The last question is, because I don't want to dominate the time, and I know you spoke about this before, including snow removal. Do you have enough guys to do these jobs?
For snow,
No, for the sidewalk.
yeah. We have a
Or-
7-person crew that's kind of split up into 2 different crews. And when we put the program together, because if you go back 3 years, we didn't have a crew. 3 years ago is when the mayor put that in there. So we went out, we did full hiring, and it took us over a year to fully hire in there. So we got a full crew for that. And have a foreman, equipment, the people, the materials. So our guys go out and do, we're doing, probably 100 sidewalks a year just on our own.
Right. All right, thank you, Chris. And I just want to say, I'm sure you, like Chris said, you guys are doing your very best.
Yeah.
But as I said before, this is a transformative time for Springfield. And I know in my recent contacts with my constituents, I have heard repeatedly some of them saying, listen, I'm paying a good chunk in taxes, and I don't feel like I'm getting my full bounty for what I'm paying. So in the sidewalks, as we all know, it's one of those ever-ending subjects that always comes up. And so thank you for doing that. I wish we had a more aggressive commitment to increase the budget for sidewalks, including manpower, but that's a whole different conversation. So, but thank you so much, Chris, for all you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, so Chris, this money, it's almost like an early Christmas present, because you're obviously having more money to deal with all these issues. Counselor Letterman has and I'll get back to a concern I have. Counselor Letterman?
Oh, yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to follow up on something I think you had said earlier and from the rep's office. But first, I wanted to say the sidewalk crew is incredible. Those guys are efficient. I have seen them in action, and they really work hard. So
I'm proud of them. The work they've done, I'm very proud of them.
They work very hard. I just want to say, relative to your comment earlier, Councilor Walsh, I think we should send a letter later on this week or next week to the state and federal delegation about what Chris said, which is to make sure that however this money comes out, some of it is put directly for municipalities to be able to spend as they see fit. Because I think obviously, Chris and those of us here in the city, we know what the city needs. And so I'd like to make sure that we get some sort of communication like that out.
Right. Let's be unrestricted. Let's not have any unfunded federal mandates or anything like that.
I'm laughing because Congressman Neal and Margaret Boyle are sick of hearing from me about that at this point. So
we'll give them a call.
We'll give them a call for it. I've been hammering that because I want to make sure, because in a state like Massachusetts, 90% of it will go inside the 495 corridor.
Right.
It'll end up at MBTA, it'll end up at Massport, it'll end up everywhere. And, there was a report, I think I mentioned it last week, that the auditor, Suzanne Bump, did about the discrepancy of funding for Western Mass, which I fully support, making some changes to Chapter 90. But I got no problem with that whatsoever. Any more money that we can get, the better on that. Like I said, my whole thing is I just don't want it to get sucked up. And lastly, what I don't want it to do is, even if it gets filtered down to municipalities, if it goes through Mass DOT, they don't have the people to process this. They just don't. They don't, and stuff will just take forever. And I want to, when you get money like this.
I think all this fund, it's a great opportunity for people that their long-standing concerns and problems and sidewalks. I mean, I think it'd be terrific if we could finally address. I mean, everywhere I go, people tell me about the list. I mean, it's mythical, So I'm
It's not
hoping.
mythical. I've seen the list, but it's, and like you said, councilors, that I don't want to be doing sidewalks and have to wait 2 years. It's just like stuff like that. Just is ridiculous. I can get a crew out there and do the work tomorrow, but if I got to go through Mass DOT for everything, it's going to take forever.
Right, and I've got just one last question here. Are private ways included in any of this?
I have money. The bond money has private ways.
Yeah.
Tentatively right now, of that 2.1 million for the roadway stuff, I have 750 to 800,000 set aside for private ways. However, like anything else, if I can get more, either state or federal money to do roads, I can then open up that bond for more sidewalks and more private ways.
That'd be great. That'd be great. And Dave, I don't know if you're still with us from Rep. Pupolo's office.
Still here, yep.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to share with us on this? And And we're really hopeful that these funds will go. And I'm sure you're here being in Representative Puplow's office, that everything stops at 495. So we want
yeah,
we want-
trust me.
down the pipe.
Trust me, I recently transitioned to Western Mass. I was working for the city of Salem before, and it is astonishing how much less attention we get. But I was able to pull up the list of amendments for the ARPA bill. Most of the amendments coming from our side, our delegation, Rep. Williams, Ramos, Gonzalez, have to do with the housing authority, so different sorts of like housing services. Rep. Williams put in for money for a veterans center, and again, none of this is guaranteed. This is all going to be voted on tomorrow. Looks like that's really it. There's a few education programs that are getting it funded, community health, and I don't have details on these just because the list with all the details is also still loading. There's 2,000 amendments, so it's taken up. Yeah. Minority owned businesses, the housing authority stuff is like roofing, cameras, fixing windows, which makes a lot of sense because the first 4 or 5 line items in the bill, and consequently the most well-funded ones, all have to do with housing. So that sort of makes sense. Food insecurity grants, that was put in by Rep. Finn. And yeah, that's about it. Some museum funding, because there's a bit of a cultural piece in there as well that's pretty well funded. But as far as the infrastructure stuff, the stuff that we'd be discussing in this meeting, not really anything, just because the scope of the bill is very targeted. So yeah, like I said, I'll monitor these. I'll get you guys an update on what passes and what does not pass.
We would appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, thank you. And
Yeah.
Yeah, glad you're here and not in Salem. Okay, Jesse, although my niece just moved there. Anything to add, Jesse?
No, Madam Chair. No, great meeting. I really enjoyed it.
I
I
liked
appreciate
it.
everybody's comments. Yeah.
Yeah, and Chris, I'm really happy to hearing about sidewalks and private ways and all these other things in such a positive light at the end of the tunnel. So, okay. All right.
Jesse,
Well,
do we still need to connect? We played tag the other day. I called you back. You called me on Monday for something?
Oh, me? Yeah,
Yeah.
we didn't connect. I'll call you back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
Did you get my
Small
voicemail
thing,
yesterday?
Small
Yeah.
thing.
And
Okay.
Chris, I have something, but I'll talk to you about it,
Okay.
when the meeting's over. So, okay, thank you guys and keep us
Thank
informed
you.
on where we are with all these requests, and hopefully all these projects will get funded. Thank you, Councilors and DeVilla. And
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.
Nice
Thank
to
you,
meet
everyone.
Welcome to
thank
Springfield.
you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, guys.